Welcome back to the channel, guys. First off, smash that like button. It really helps me out in the algorithm, guys. All my social medias can be found in the description of this video. That's my Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and my Twitter. If you want to get a hold of me, use my Instagram. And as I say, all links can be found in the description of this video. All my guests that come on here, any social medias they have can also be found in the description of this video. If it's an author or if it's any other link that they want advertised, you can find all those links in the description of this video. It'll take you to Amazon to buy their book or whatnot. So just if you're interested in the guest, just go into the description and you should be able to find some means of contacting them, their Facebook, where to buy their book. Just check out the description and you will find all those links. If you haven't already, please subscribe and ring the bell. And make sure you ring the bell because then you'll be notified on future content that I post. I don't have a membership or a super chat to this channel for the reason being YouTube takes a vast chunk out of the pay. So if somebody pays money into this channel, basically YouTube can take a big percentage of that. So what I've done is I've put a PayPal link in the description of this video. If you do want to donate to the channel, you can. I'm not saying you have to. All this is free. Subscribing to my channel is free. All of that is free. But for the people that have asked in the past, we want to donate to the channel, and they've asked me to put up a super chat or a members list, I don't do that because YouTube, in my opinion, they take a little bit too much from that. And anybody that's going to donate to this channel, I would rather the money go to the channel than to YouTube. So if you do want to donate to the channel, you can use the PayPal link in the description of this video. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. Remember, smash that like button and subscribe and ring the bell. Enjoy the podcast, guys, and peace. Robert, how are you doing, sir?
Good evening to you.
It's very good to get you on. You're an author, I believe, The Black Pool.
Yes.
Do you want to brief the audience on who you are and where you come from?
Yeah, my name is Robert Sargent and I come from a place called Crumlin. Most people will be familiar with Crumlin because of Our Lady's Hospital for Sick Children. I literally lived a stone's throw from there, and we moved down there in 1977 from a place called Ballymount Road in Walkinstown, which a lot of people would know. It's the gateway into Ballymount Industrial Estate up in Walkinstown. And I was 5 years of age and I moved into Crumlin. And my dad's originally a Crumlin man, my mother's a Walkinstown woman. So I moved to a place called Windmill Park, as I said, which is at the back of Crumlin Village. So if you know Our Lady's Hospital here in Crumlin Village there, I'm smack bang in the middle there, and that's where I came from. Working class community of Dublin, just on the outskirts of the Dublin city. One of 5 children, and one big sister, 2 little sisters, and a little brother. Well, not so little anymore, like, you know, but that's where we came from. And I'm now living still in Dublin, but I have moved to Lucan, County Dublin. So been up here now the guts of 20 years. So yeah, still.
How are you finding it then? Is it see, Dublin's changed. A lot of people, you know, I've used to go down to Dublin myself as a kid. I've been there recently, and the place keeps changing. It's always evolving. But there's an underbelly to Dublin that people don't realize. I speak to a lot of people from all places from all around the world: New York, Australia, places in England, my own place in Belfast. But even though the people of Dublin are the best people, they're lovely people, there's an underbelly to Dublin, and Dublin's had a lot of troubles. Do you think that's why, and maybe we'll get into your book now, do you think that's why you became an author and sort of wrote a crime novel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for those who don't know Crumlin as well, Crumlin's a fantastic place and a great place to grow up in. And we played with Crumlin GAA, played hurling and football with them. Well, some people may say I tried to play, you know. But Crumlin was also, it's on the outskirts of Dublin City. And as I said, Dublin's a changing place. And a part of the book, it goes into, you know, Dublin in itself, because for those of you, I might as well show you. Here we go. Look,
Yeah, sure, yeah.
there's the Black Pill. Oh, where am I going?
Yeah, that's it now, yeah.
That's it there. That's the Black Pill. Now, obviously, the Dubs will know, and Black Pill is on Dublin, which is the Irish for Dublin. So that's where the name for the book originated from. And when I said it to people, like, I'm going to call the book The Black Pill because of on Dublin, and it's going to be a gangland book, they go, wow, that's a fantastic thing. And oddly enough, it was the very first thing for the book I came up with was the name, you know, and I just thought the name made sense for what the book was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know where I'm from, and a lot of Dubs will know where I'm from, it's we had some of the most famous gangsters in Irish history, let's just say, came from Crumlin over the years. But as I said, like, Crumlin is a fabulous place and it's a fantastic place to grow up in. But unfortunately, the small minority makes it bad for the majority. And we had our very, very small minority who put us on the front pages of newspapers for many different reasons over the years. But we also were on the back pages for great reasons as well, because of our sporting abilities in Crumlin and other things.
For sure.
As well, which balanced that out. But there's also like some reporters who will remain nameless who like to put, you know, names on places and give all these gangsters on little nicknames. And when you talk to them, you realise they never step foot in there. I don't know, of course, you're not allowed to step foot in the place.
Work away, curse away.
So, like, I've seen one thing calling Crumlin the murder mile, and I was kind of like, this fella who wrote this article, I kind of, what the fuck are you talking about? I mean, there was something like 2 murders in 40 years in Crumlin, and you're calling this place a murder mile because somebody gets killed there. So that type of thing, like the balance of the book kind of brings it to the fore, where I'm talking about. It's kind of like what you want to call a historical crime drama. And I started it off, obviously, when the lad was born, till later in around now. So it covers 40 years of crime that happened in Dublin. 40 years of crime is actual crime that happened in Dublin, but it's a story based inside that from this gang that I write about. And it's all fictitious, but covering the stories of, you know, a 40-year period, which we can go into more if you want in a while.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. Listen, it really, really interests me. So basically, the stories are real, but the people are sort of changed. Is that the correct way?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is that I didn't write about real people in the sense, but I mean, like, you can tell these stories and they can be any city in the world and people can relate to them, you know, because you show me a town or a city in the world that has no crime or no problems. I'll call you a liar, because every town and every city has a problem within it. But I'm writing about the one that we know from, and I know from, is because where I'm from is Dublin, and it's from Crumlin. And part of the reason why people were asking me, why did you write about it being based in around that Crumlin inner city area, is because that's where I'm from. I'm not going to write about Belfast. I don't know Belfast. I know Belfast, but I don't know Belfast like I know where I'm from.
Yeah.
And that's why I based it in and around that area. And people who read the book kind of go, oh yeah, geez, you can tell you're from there. You know the back alleys and the streets and the street lamps and everything in the area, you know. So that comes out in it. But when I decided to write the book, it was really kind of like not an epiphany or anything like that. I had said to my wife, I said, you know what? I said, I think I have a book. I think I have a book I can write. And she went, you know, and I says, I think I definitely have a story. And I sat down and explained it to her, and she went, well, go ahead and see how you get on with it, because she never thought that'd be something I'd be one for. So I says, I'll start writing, and it just flooded out of me, you know. And I started it when I was starting to write about it. I was going to do about the heroin epidemic in Dublin. And the thing is that, as I said, the things I wrote about are factual in the sense that they happened. Now, anybody who tells me, oh, the heroin in Dublin wasn't that bad, it was, and, you know, and stop lying, because you're the lawyer, I'm not, it happened, and it was ignored. And I do go into that in the book, but I started off with wanting to do about that. And then I said to myself, you know what? I can bring this somewhere. I just don't think I want to base it in the kind of early to late 80s into the early 90s. I says, I'm just going to make this grow. because the group I wrote about, the first fellow was Thomas Morgan, or Tommy Morgan, Little Don is his nickname in the book, he was born in 69. So I says, Jesus Christ, I was about 83. And so he's only 14. But as I said, the book brings all this together. And at 14, he met a person who got him involved in the heroin industry. And it's an industry, let's be honest about it. You know, the drugs
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
industry, you know, it's an industry. And so I said, when it got to kind of 1990, I says, this lad's only 21, you know? And around 1988 to 92, then it brings you into the kind of the rave scene, which is there.
Yeah.
Because I was
So
born in 72 myself, so I'm 50 now. So I says, hang on a minute. I think the story could evolve here
yeah,
from them. Something happens, obviously, they get arrested, go to prison. Shocker, you know, criminal goes to prison. But
yeah,
they come out and then they get involved in the rave scene and the ecstasy and the dance music and so on and so forth. And then it's all about the underground dance scene in Dublin. But you also go and spend a couple of years in Ibiza in the book as well. So I tied that into them kind of progressing from getting older, from being street runners to dealing with heroin to, you know, then going
that
to
was a
rave.
big thing, though. That was a big thing, Robert.
Massive,
And you know, it was a
massive.
big thing for boys to go over to Ibiza. The rave scene in Dublin was absolutely massive. I
It
didn't
was,
realize how big
yeah,
it was because my rave scene was the 2000s. So
yeah,
hearing stories about whenever I was a kid in Dublin, apparently it was absolutely banging. It was
huge.
just ecstasy city. And it was actually a very calm period of Dublin at that stage.
Yeah,
The ecstasy.
yeah, the
Um,
love boat, as they say, yeah.
yeah,
Because
but it was later on the heroin then came in, wasn't it?
no, the heroin came previous to the dance scene.
Oh, right, it came previous to the
Yeah.
dancing, right,
Well,
right.
the heroin scene kind of it kept going. There's all this kind of talk of the heroin scene back there. There's as many heroin addicts in Dublin now as there was back then. It's just
Yeah,
that it's not spoken about, you know. So
yeah,
we're kind of leave that over there because the same thing as what happened back then was that, and it's like everything else as well that the politicians, everybody ignored it until it was on our doorstep, and then when it was on the doorstep, oh Jesus Christ, we have a problem here, you know. But people are saying, we've been telling you about this problem for years. Like, you know, don't come along and tell us that there's a problem now. We told you there was a problem 10 years ago. And I kind of go into that in the book as well, in the sense that with CPAD, I go a small bit into that, not too much, but like I went through, there's kind of I don't want to say an explanation in chapters about what's going on at the time, because some of the people I know who grew up were kind of going, "Why are you telling me that in the book? I know about that." I says, "Yeah, but you do, but not everybody else does." You know, so it was kind of for the broader community to read the book and kind of find out that, like, how the heroin affected the communities and so on and so forth, and why it was based in and around the inner cities and so on. I'll go back to the rave scene in a second if you want, and I'll give you a
You're
bit more
just
background.
just to sort of interject there. Your book, the first thing I'm getting from your book here is that it's like a. Do you ever see like a factual sort of drama? Not a drama, but you'll see like a factual thing on TV played by different actors, but they're telling the exact same story. What's the word for that? It's like that's what your book is. Everybody's different, but it's telling the tale of the tape throughout the
Yeah,
years.
it's as somebody says to me, it's a factual truth novel. You know, in
Yeah,
that sense, like, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
where as I said from the outset, like the book does cover a lot of the criminal things that happened in Dublin over the years, over the 40-year period, but the stories are added to the factualities, if you want to put it like that. Because the heroin scene, it happened, the rave scene happened, and as I'll go into in a few minutes, what came after happened. But I
Hmm.
just added people into that story to kind of give it that bit of meat on the bones, if you want to put it as that, you know,
Yeah.
of how it grew. And the whole point behind the book was to show how these fellas like Thomas Morton and his gang from the inner city were able to grow from being these little street urchins, and then grown and then grown and then grown and to what it became. And
Hmm.
the whole book takes you through that journey of how they done that and where they
Yeah.
came from to where they got, you know. And it does, as I said, it starts with the heroin, and then it goes. Look, there's other parts in it about the, you know, breaking into houses, you know, joyriding or rob cars, whatever terminology people want to use about that. It's
Yeah.
all in there. I grew up around it. I seen it, you know, and it's not like that I was some fella who was living in a log cabin up in the Wicklow Mountains that didn't see anything that ever happened. I was there. Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
when I say I was there, I wasn't involved in criminality in a sense, and I never took heroin or anything like that. So I was never a heroin addict, but I was there and I seen it. But the thing was that it comes back to a point that you made previously was why was Dublin is a growing city. But if you remember back in, you wouldn't remember back in 1980 and in the early 80s, Dublin was a very small city. It was a very small, compact city. And when you got to Ballymount Road, where I came from, or where you got out just past Drumcondra on the other side, that was Dublin City. Then you're back around to the coast. And that's why it was kind of confined to the north and south inner city in Dublin. Because there was, and then it went into, you know, your working class estates on the outskirts of the city. Because you remember this as well, that like Tala and Ballymun that only started building in, well, especially Ballymun in the late 60s into the 70s, and Tala only started getting built in the 70s as well. So they were only new up and coming, you know, communities. So Dublin kind of was there, but it was only in the 90s during the Celtic Tiger and on that Dublin just starts expanding and got.
It started to expand. There was a period there I remember going down, and it was just expanding. Every time you went down, it was changing, and it's still like that to this day. I'll go down, and then I just don't even recognize the place. It's so different. You go down, and it's like a bloody utopia. You see it, and then as I said to you before, backstage, you scratch away that sort of surface that looks beautiful, and then what's inside, you know, the people, you know, as you say, the drugs that are ripping through the community, the crime and stuff. It's terrible to see. But Dublin itself, the Dublin people, the Irish people in Dublin, they're fantastic, beautiful people. Like I was down there. They're just so welcoming. You can have a drink with them. You can have a bit of crack with them. It's just brilliant to be. You feel very comfortable in the place, but there is that underbelly, and it's always there, and there's always something to remind you that it's there. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
It is, and like it's like where I'm sitting here right now. Like 25 years ago, I'd be sitting in the middle of a field of where I am right now, and that's only 25 years ago, which is nothing. You know, as I said, Dublin was a very, very small city with a very compacted, where the crime at the time, everybody knew everybody and what was going on, and during the 80s and so on, and previous to that. So it kind of gives the people who didn't understand what happened in back then is that because why it was always there and just there is because Dublin wasn't really there at that sense. So it was kind of condensed into these areas because they were the only areas there in a sense.
Well, fair play. Listen, man, I'll leave the link to get your book in the comment section and description of this video. Go over and buy the book, guys. I haven't read the book. I would have loved to have read this book before speaking to you, but I will, because it's looking like it's a very good book to read. So it's going to give you a good baseline of what Dublin was like throughout these eras, and that's fantastic for anybody that's into true crime.
And it does. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'll say to people here is that on Facebook as well as the Black Pill page, and it's not as in Black Pill in England. It's 3 words. It's their Black Pill. Sorry for spelling it out, but the thing is that it's if you go onto the Black Pill page, read the comments. Go on to Amazon, read the comments. Go on to Waterstones, read the comments. If you don't believe what we're saying here, the people are writing comments there, you know, and they're writing them online and telling people what they think of this book. So go on and just read the comments, and if you think the comments are something that you like, then go ahead and get the book.
It's fantastic what we live in an era that can happen. Like back in the day, you had to take somebody's word for it, or but now you can actually go on. There's comments. I've seen them myself. Very, very good reviews, comments on this book. If you want a good baseline, because there's a lot of people that I would speak to, a lot of the channels that I would follow are sort of covering the Kinahan situation, you know, the general and people like that. They love all that stuff, and they want to see that. So go buy this book. This is going to give you a very good insight into what Dublin was like in those eras. And listen, as I say, I'm going to be buying this book and I'm going to be reading it myself. Just speaking on something, there's a lot of people I would speak to, and they talk about the general. Was the general a prominent figure in Dublin? Does he take any sort of a stance on your book at any time?
No, as I said, there's not really any base of any of the actual gangsters. I didn't base it around any of them, but was he prominent in Dublin? Absolutely, yes, and I would have known a lot of his gang. A few of them lived not too far from me. Same as the Gilligan gang, same as the Kinahan cartel. A lot of them would be coming from the general area where I'm from in Crumlin. So I would have known a lot of them. Older, my dad's age would be in a lot of the Martin Cal gang, and then some of them my age and younger from kind of the Gilligan and the Kinahan cartel area, you know. But a lot of people will read the book and kind of put two and two together and come up with six and say that, you know, this is about this gang or that gang. But as I'm saying here, there is stories based on the happenings in Ireland and Dublin over the years, and I made a gang up to fit in around what had happened over the years. People can surmise what they want, you know, it doesn't matter. It's just I put a story together that, as I said, is 50-50 fact and fiction. The fact is that these things happen. The fiction is the gang that I made it up about, you know.
Well, people
So
need to realize it's not just about writing a book and putting it out there. This isn't, you know, a lot of people, you see this happening in America, ex-gangsters writing books about,
yeah,
you know, their ex-mob guys. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if you're ex-mob, but you know, you're out here giving the secrets of the mob away. You know what I mean? It's quite a strange thing. You know, I
the
always be
Omerta,
wary
yeah,
of those people. So people need to understand that it's a, when you're talking about sort of the underbelly of Dublin, the crime, the cartel, and things like that. This is real. This isn't a fake thing. This is real.
yeah.
This goes on. This has affected a lot of people's lives in Dublin. And
Yeah.
are you comfortable talking about certain situations in Dublin that are going on at the minute, or would you rather not?
Well, the thing is that, like, I mean, I can get sued for talking about certain things that aren't, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
people
of
can be
course.
in charge for.
Yeah.
And then there's also things that there's say Judas A on as well. You're not allowed to talk about as well because it could be, you know, criminal things going on in the courts about these
Yes.
things as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, look, I mean, the thing is that what we can all talk about in Dublin, and I mean, they used to say that the heroin problem and the drug problem was a Dublin problem. But it comes back to, again, what I said earlier, any town or city in Ireland. You show me a town or city in Ireland, or any even little, you know, village in Ireland that doesn't have drugs. I
Yeah,
mean,
of course.
I'd
Yeah.
be amazed to find one that doesn't have any drugs in them at all.
Hmm.
Um, yes, there's the antisocial behaviour. That's like, this antisocial behaviour is not a new thing. It's something that's been around since I was a young flit in Dublin, you know. And the likes of the drugs has been around for many years as well. It's not a new thing either. Has it come on and has it progressed to different levels that we never thought we would see? Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Hmm.
of course. I mean, the again, I don't want to keep harping back to the book, but the thing is, in the book, what I do is it takes you on that journey. And with the gang, I really go into detail in how they become a gang and what it takes to become a gang. Now, it's not for the faint-hearted. Like, it's not like, oh, you can't do that, you're a very bold man. Now, it's, you know, you're talking, there is violence, there is murder, there's drugs, there's sex, drugs, rock and roll, the whole thing is in it, like, you know. But there's kind of an understanding that, you know, this is not a bravado society that you're going into. I
Yep.
I don't build these up to be, you know, anti-heroes in a sense. I kind of, and people have said it to me as well. He says, Robert, this is like, I have told the story. These are what they are. They're not nice people. And I was delighted when people came back to me and said that when I wrote about them, this is what it is. And I called it as it is. And people, if you've read a few of the reviews, and a lot of the reviews are saying it's raw and it's gritty, pulls no punches. That comes up quite a lot in the reviews.
That's Dublin. That's Dublin.
Yeah,
That's the
and
thing.
that's
That's
what,
Dublin. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
and that's what people are saying to me about it. And, you know, it did, and then I really go into deep with the kind of the importation end of things. I don't want to give too much away on that one, though. You know, that
Yeah,
will
guys,
spoil
go and
that.
buy the book and actually, because this is what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of insight into what actually went on
Oh
in
yeah, yeah,
the importation, and that, see, that's where the real crime comes in. There's the
yeah,
selling it in the streets. There's selling all these different types of drugs in the streets, but getting that stuff from maybe different countries. That's where the real shit goes on,
yeah,
because you're dealing with multiple different jurisdictions, multiple different police forces, and it's crazy. I've heard a few stories. I've listened to Scott. Scott sort of passed you on to me, and
yeah.
that's what,
That's right. Yeah,
you know. Big up Scott.
big
He's a
up,
great
Scotty. Yeah.
guy. I like him. He's coming on to do a few things. And when you hear these stories, man, it is. And there's a few things you can't speak about, but
No,
when you
absolutely
hear
not.
these
No.
stories, these are wild things. Without giving
Yeah,
it away, can you talk about
yeah.
it a little bit?
Well, not giving it away is the sense that drugs are imported. You know, shocker. But the one thing I was doing was when I was doing about Tommy Moran and his gang doing the heroin runs and dealing heroin in Dublin. And then I brought it up to the ecstasy, and I was kind of going, Robert, you've got there's four main lads in the gang, and then what comes around them. Well, I'll explain that in a second. Is that you're just telling people that these fellas are dealing drugs, but you're not telling them where they came from. So it went from there, and I said, "Right, I've got that plateau. I know where I can hit now." And then it went into the Celtic Tiger, and then it went into the importation of cocaine and how they got it in and where they got it from and how they got contacts and through contacts and how the whole thing came together. So there is a lot in the book, and it comes into the middle of the book that really comes together, you know. So it's not just four fellas who are gangsters in Dublin who are becoming a massive drug gang or a massive criminal gang in Dublin. I went into it, and I went right into the nitty gritty of it.
I
And
can't wait to read it. I can't wait to get this book.
you know, but like some people say to me, "Geez, Robert, there was one thing I was trying to go back and forward, and who was this, that, and whatever." That's one thing, and I went, "Yeah, that's fair enough. It's a fair point." But the thing is, because I went into that detail, that there's a fella who was the distributor up in Amsterdam, there's a fella in Madrid, there's a fella in Morocco, there's a fella in Turkey, there's a gang in England, there's a gang in Ireland. I had to put them all in there because these are all the cogs in the wheel that make this thing turn. Because if I start telling, "Oh yeah, they're bringing the drugs in here from everywhere," you're reading the book, where the fuck did they get it from? You know, so
Yeah.
the detail is in the devil's in the detail, and the detail
That's
is in
the
the book.
thing, man. The devil is in the detail. And what I want to say is, right, on the west coast of Ireland, right, there's a big ocean out there. There's a lot of stuff comes across that water that people don't know about. I'm not going to tell you how I know about these things. I'm a
And
digging,
believe it or not, it's
you
in the
know,
book.
it's it. There's a lot of packages out in that ocean that people
Big time.
that just wash up on the shore. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Now,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff comes off. I don't know what's the closest country from Ireland. There'll be a lot of Brazilians coming across that water, a lot of Colombians coming across that
I
water.
better believe
And
you
this
do.
is the thing when you're dealing with Ireland. Ireland is a hub because a lot of stuff can come through Ireland and a lot of stuff can come into Ireland. And
There is a section in it, and it's all about again the importation, and there is the rugged rocks of the south coast of Ireland or the southeast coast of Ireland around Wexford, and the boats are coming in from a boat signaling and out in the bay, the usual, and that's all in it. And that's all in it. And then
yeah,
what that's in it as well. They're on their high speed boats flying the thing in onto the beaches, drugs into the back of the van, up to the distribution centres in and around Dublin and so on like that. But for that boat to get to there, the speedboat to get to there and bring it to there, there's all this stuff that happens here. And that's all in that book. That'll tell you how to get it from over there to over here. And that's
wow,
there. It's in it.
fascinating.
So the thing is that, like, yeah, there's a lot of people in it. There's a lot happening. But, I mean, it doesn't kind of go back and forward in time. It just
Is it
keeps going
verified
forward.
information? You have verified this information and you know yourself, and this is all covered. Like, obviously, yes, it's a book, you have to write a book, but is it verified too that in those certain situations when it comes to the transportation, the importation, that's all verified information?
Yes and no, because obviously I have to use this old fella up here as well to make a story.
Yeah.
But if anybody's writing a book, you have to do a lot of research in relation to certain things as well. And I've done a lot of research. But as you're writing a book, as you go along, you might come to a bump and you kind of go, "Ooh, let me just check that." Say, for instance, if I say that a kilo of cocaine in 1998 was 10 grand, let's say, you can be pretty sure it was 10 grand.
Yeah.
You'd be pretty sure that the prices of what I say, or if I say Monday, the 31st of March was a Monday in 2005, it's a Monday. That's
Yeah.
the detail I went into it,
Yeah,
So
I get what you're saying. But the whole
made sure that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. The whole premise of it, though, it's verified, but there might be. I understand what you're saying. It's just when you're talking about the transportation, importation, they're very fine details. It's not just a generic thing that this is what you do, because it changes every year when it comes to transportation, because they, the authorities sort of up their game. And I always say, when it comes to I don't even like calling them criminals, because at the end of the day, for me, the real criminals is the pharmaceutical companies. That's the real cartel. So I don't even like calling, drug dealers criminals, because the government is drug dealing at the end of the day. So
Mhm.
who are they? Are they also criminals because they have a bit of
Or
paper
as
to
they
say
call
that
it,
it's okay
illegal
for them
drugs,
to do it?
illegal drug dealers. Yeah.
Do you know? Do you get what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I do. I know. I get what you're saying.
when I
But like,
say criminals, I'm not actually putting anybody down, but sort of people who didn't do it the way the government did it. Should I say?
yeah.
Is that the correct way of putting it?
Ah, sure. Look at. I
You
mean,
know, those people have to always be 10 steps ahead of the governments with
yeah.
multiple countries just to make a living. Why is it worth it? Why do you think it's worth even getting into that world?
I mean, it's an answer to a mean, and some people see that as the quick way of getting rich. And if drug dealing works out well for you, you can get rich quick, and we all know that. I mean,
Too
the
much
history.
Scarface.
Well, I mean, not even Scarface. I just finished watching a thing called Snowfall, which was fantastic. It was on a Disney Plus Star, and it was about the Contra War in South America, and it's based around the true story of how the crack cocaine came into Los Angeles. And it's 5 seasons there with about 10 episodes in each season. And it's not a documentary, but it's a TV show based on true facts, same as Mark Wayne book is. And it just shows how the CIA was importing cocaine through this fella in LA to fund the war against the Contras in Nicaragua. And
Well,
and that's kind
see,
of, you don't know if you ever heard of Oliver North trial and the Contras in Nicaragua and
I haven't heard of them, but I do know in regards, and people talk about court cases and all this here. Listen, to be honest with you, whatever it is, if Hillary Clinton comes down and sticks a bullet in me, so be it. But I do know that just a wee bit off topic, that Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas,
yeah,
and he was facilitating certain. I think it was DEA, CIA. I forget which one it was.
they
There
all were.
was there was
Mm,
cocaine coming into
yeah,
Arkansas,
yeah,
and one of the stories that was read that Bill was sniffing that much that he went into the hospital because his whole nose was mangled. And
yeah,
Hillary Clinton said that she would kill everybody if
yeah.
if this story got out. But the story did get out, and I don't know if that's just a myth or just a tale. But
Well, I wouldn't be surprised with them too, especially with Hillary. That woman has got some power,
yeah, listen, that is a
Mhm.
cartel. Listen,
Yeah,
I don't listen. I'm going to call a spade a spade. That is a cartel. In my opinion, that's all. Well, that's all allegedly. He allegedly done those things, but the reality of the situation is this is what we're talking about. You
yeah,
know, the book that you're writing here. It's a fascinating book about these people, as from street level to big level to sort of
yeah,
cartel level to running the shit level. But
yeah.
at the same time, even they would get to a certain level, but then what's higher than that? The governments are running that. That's why I have that pyramid behind me, because that does represent, the all-seeing eye. It sees everything. It does everything. Big Brother
Yeah,
controls
I mean,
everything.
look, there's many a thing that a blind eye has been thrown to over the year, and then
Yeah, yeah.
as it comes back to when governments and so on react is when they're on their own doorstep, and at times, and at most times, when governments react, it's too late to react to the problems. And like sometimes, like as I said with that thing in LA with the crack and all that, that was government control and it was government led, and then it was got out of control, and they kind of went, well, fuck all got to do with us. Sorry about that, lads. We're out of here, you know.
It's
So, some of the biggest criminals in the world wear short and ties. We all know that, you know,
100%,
and
100%.
nobody's covering that one up.
But
Um,
but you talk about America, and we'll talk about Australia, we'll talk about all these different places around the world. But one thing that stands out to me about Dublin, and I'm sure you talk about it in your book, is the violence, the level of violence. Because I remember a few years ago there was a I don't know if you know, I don't know if you talked about this in your book, I don't know if it covers it, but there was sort of like Mexican style murders in Dublin where there was body parts found in bags left, right, and
yeah,
centre spread across Dublin. The violence in Dublin, I speak to a lot of people from Glasgow. There's a lot of violence there. It's very much like Dublin, but Dublin itself, it stands out to me for the level of, it can be very calm, but all of a sudden you can just get a sort of, not a riot, but it can be very violent if you're living in that world. What is violence like in that world?
the violence in the drug world is probably the most fierce of all. The gang activity, if you want to put it around the world, as you say, you look at the Mexicans, you look at the Colombians, like they're vicious. I mean, it's like when they have gang wars, boy Jesus, they have gang wars, and it's not violent, it is vicious.
They
And
taught the Taliban how to do some of their torture techniques.
yeah,
People
it's
didn't realize
it's
that's a real thing.
and the whole thing of that they don't just shoot you or torture you or chop you up. It's down the line, and there in Dublin. Yeah, I mean, when I'm doing the book and when the violence is happening, it's of the time, if you get me. You know, so in 1985, if somebody gets killed, they probably get shot or stabbed, because that would be how they would be killed at that time. You know, there wouldn't have been that sort of level. But as it goes on, obviously, where there would have been, say, one person murdered in 1985, in 2005, there's probably 13. And that does get escalating the book, but it escalates because, as I said, the timing of the gang, as they get bigger, the violence gets bigger and more drawn out, and there's more people who want what they have, and they're fighting to get them away and say, no, you're not having that, we're keeping this, so we need to do that to them before they do that to us, and bang, it happens. So yes, there is.
How did the police deal with that? Have they got the resources for that? Did the car? Do they not car? Is there good cops? Is there bad cops? What's the sort of what's the cops? What are they thinking in regards to this? How do they even stop that?
I think, as I said, originally with the heroin epidemic, when it happened in Dublin, there was 35 members of the National Drug Squad in Ireland. Just take that into it. 35 members in the National Drug Squad. And then the government went, fucking hell, we got a problem here. You know, we got 35 guards trying to run around. And there was this piece in it about the Mockies, and the Mockies were they were actually police. There was only about 5 coppers in it. They were working in and around Dublin undercover, and they were called Mockies by the drug dealers because they were mocking drug addicts, pretending to be drug addicts, and trying to find out underlying who was doing what, and undercover, so on, you know. And so over the years, obviously, they were throwing money at the drug problems in Ireland, and it just really never got anywhere because they never got a hold of it from the original output point back in the early 80s when the heroin kicked in. And then what happened was that it was around 93ish. You won't remember this now, you're too young. Around 93, Ireland started to kind of get a little bit cocky with itself. You know, we've got a few bob here, we're doing well in the World Cup. You know, everybody's got a job. Not really many people are starting to emigrate. You know, this is cool. Cocaine was always known as the rich man's drug. In the 70s, the 80s, the rock stars, you know, it was the big time boys in Wall Street who were doing cocaine. Johnny down in the fucking local wasn't doing cocaine, you know?
Yeah.
They just couldn't afford it. Half their wages begun on a fucking line of cocaine back in the 80s. It came in, and I do go into detail in this again in the book as well. And then when they start importing the cocaine, they were kind of going, everybody wants this fucking thing, like, you know? So, obviously, demand, you know, the price, but more cocaine is being sold, but the price is going down. So Johnny down the local was able to get his cocaine on the weekends. And then obviously there was people who got addicted to cocaine and so on and so forth. But that's another story that came from that. So other people be looking in there kind of going, Thomas Morden and his gang they're making a fucking fortune out of this stuff. You know? I want that. Boom. And
that's where the explosion happened of sort of drugs then. And
it wasn't just the explosion of the drugs, it was the explosion of the inner circle of different gangs wanting it, if you get me. Where everybody on the outside of that was still snorting the cocaine, but you have one gang looking at this gang and trying to go, I want what he has, let's take it. And he's saying, you're not fucking getting it.
Yeah, well, is that the sort of then you've got your sort of cartels then, because you know people think cartel it's people sitting with suits on and smoking cigars. It's not a cartel. A cartel is a family of people that will launder money between themselves with different businesses. That's what a cartel is. It doesn't matter if you're wearing an Adidas tracksuit or an Armani suit. It doesn't make a difference. You know
Absolutely,
what I mean? Yes. This is a lot of people says to me when me and Scott done the last podcast, there's like talking about cartels and beautiful gangsters. He was like, oh, it wasn't like that at all. There was none of these gangsters running about. He goes, no, but they were laundering money with multiple businesses in a family unit. That is a cartel. And
Scott is right. Scott is right because in the book, again, it's in the book. It's literally there about them because, as I said to you already, is that you've got Morning and there's kind of 4 main people. Then you had your man in Morocco, you had your man in Amsterdam, you had your man in Turkey, you had your man in England, you had all these gangs in Ireland. So that's why I said I had to go into this book in that detail, because that cog of that wheel started off with here in Dublin City of those lads, and then the cog just got bigger. It got bigger and it got bigger. And the explanation behind there's so many names in the book and so many different people in the book, because they all have a part to play in that cartel. it's a gang, it's a cartel, but they're all doing something. And when you're reading it, you'll see some fella called, Van der Beek in the book, and you see his name come, oh, that's your man from Holland. He's importing through Holland to Dublin, but he's doing the hash. Then you get another fella, there's a Scouser fella in it as well, and he's down in southern Spain. He's bringing in some stuff as well from the heroin from Afghanistan. And so that's all in there, like, you know what I mean? And then it was like in the book again, there's one or two people who say to him, here, Tommy, like, the heroin and the hash and all is great, but you're missing out this cocaine, mate. So it was kind of like somebody pulling him aside and saying, by the way, and then he's thinking to himself, a couple of people said this to me now, why are we not doing this? And then he looks into the figures and it's fucking hell. He sees Escobar's figures and what kind of numbers are coming out from the cocaine. And then the gang gets bigger again, and the gang gets bigger again, and then you're meeting in different cities across Europe. I mean, there's Berlin, there's Amsterdam, there's Edinburgh, there's Athlone, all in the book.
That's the thing, man. There's a lot of, what's really striking to me, it's just a personal note. While this is all going on, the Troubles is going on in the north of Ireland here. And there's people, just going to tell the truth, there's people up here were at the time getting shot for selling hash. You would have got shot in the kneecaps for selling bloody hash. Do you know what I mean? While that's going on, the English, the Irish connection, like the Republic of Ireland and the English are sort of bonding with these sort of, cross the water drug trade, while the north of Ireland is at war with the British government. It's so crazy how that can happen on such a small island, such a chalk and cheese situation.
And I do go into that in a bit. Honestly, you must have read the book, honest to God.
No, it's just obviously, this is the thing.
But a lot of stuff. A lot of the stuff is kind of like, a lot of stuff, but it's getting it all together and kind of seeing how it progressed and where it all came from. And I do mention this slightly in the book, that I do mention that that the Irish government was fighting a war with the Provost and what's going on in the north, and then they had this sort of drug thing going on in the background, and they only had 35 members of the National Drug Squad, and they kind of go, fuck, we have to, these fellas are robbing banks and everything, we have to keep an eye on this, but kind of discarding what was actually going on in their own backyard, which was going to cost them more money down the long term, and so they kind of focused 90% over here where they should have prime, 60 over here, 40 over there, or 70 over here, 30 over there, whatever way.
The way they seen it, the drugs was the last of the worries, because what you were dealing with there was paramilitary groups.
Yeah.
And personally, myself, I do believe that at that stage, paramilitary groups just ran Ireland. It doesn't matter if it was loyalist paramilitaries, Republican paramilitaries. Essentially, they were the dominant force in Ireland. The governments, the RUC, which is now the PSNI, they had no control. The Garda, they had no control. You had the gangs in Dublin running that, and then you had the paramilitaries up the north. But essentially, Ireland itself was ran by this sort of paramilitary group. I don't understand for the life of me why heroin hasn't ripped through the north of Ireland. Now, it's here. There's crack here. There's heroin here. But it hasn't ripped through the place as much as, not as much as it should, but there's definitely a stigma here for the level of trauma that the north of Ireland has been through. You would think every other person would be on it, but they're not. They're not. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I know Belfast at the minute's going through a terrible thing in regards to drugs, and that's slowly happened over the past 20 years. I've seen it. But see, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you probably wouldn't have seen it as much. Do you know what I mean?
I wouldn't.
But it's a strange one.
I think the reason behind that was because the moving in and around the six counties, if you want to call it, just the six counties block, it wouldn't have been that easy at that time because, as you said, you've got yourself in enclaves where you've got, say, Tigers Bay or you've got West Belfast.
Yeah.
You go in there, you're only going in there for a reason. You live there or they know you, or you're going into West Belfast for a certain reason as well. So to get drugs in and around the six counties as a block, say, at that time would have been very, very difficult. And the Republicans and the Loyalists would have had control on who was coming and going. Where down in the south, if you want to call it that, it would have been a lot more open. And the paramilitaries wouldn't have had as much as a tight hold on the 26 counties.
Yeah.
As they do on the six counties. And that's I think that's part of the difference, because they most certainly weren't holding areas from, say, the Guards or the Irish Army getting into, like where they would have been from the RUC and the Brits in the six counties.
Mhm.
That's a completely different. Like, I know they're blocks right beside each other, but it was two completely different places at the one
But
time.
that's people don't understand that. People
Mm.
get, where you're from, Robert, and where I'm from, at one stage, you're talking about chalk and cheese. It's a completely, even though it's the same country, completely two different places. And, it's crazy to actually think that was actually going on. I think maybe the old IRA maybe had a bit more to do with the whole of Ireland. But as you say, the Provies, probably at that stage would have been predominantly the north of Ireland and sort of controlling parts of that. Same with the loyalist paramilitaries, um, and they had no sort of back in with your book. They had no real sort of they had no interjection into your book throughout those periods.
Not really, no, because they wouldn't really have uh, at that time or through the whole book. It was more the state, like the Republican movement would have stepped in at the time of CPAD in the early '80s when it was concerned Parents Against Drugs that was set up in the inner city of Dublin, North Inner City, and they kind of took a they were there saying don't fucking threaten the people in CPAD, but they kind of took an outside look in instead of
Mm-hmm.
actually stepping in and doing anything. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying doing anything, but they were there in face more than body, if you get me, you know what I mean? And the same thing, they always did have the kind of, you know, they were always against drug dealers. And there was incidents over the years that say the Republican movement and drug dealers came head to head against each other. That's a fact, you know, but it never really
Yeah.
it was more it was more state versus criminal element, if you want to call it that, and it would be more state against Republican elements as well, where
Mhm.
the other two, not never the twain met, but never really came head to head on each other because they both have things that they were dealing with at the time, I would imagine, and it was never a fight on the streets of Dublin and Ireland between drug dealers and Republicans. That never really occurred.
Just thinking about that, it's actually a miracle that Ireland is in the state that it's in today, because we've been through so much. It doesn't matter if it's the Republic of Ireland, the North of Ireland, in regards to drugs in the Republic of Ireland. All different types of crime. To the North of Ireland with the troubles and the war that was going on. If you actually think about it and you take a step back and you look at it for what it is for 2 minutes, and you're looking at Ireland, you have to be very proud to come from this country. Doesn't matter if you consider yourself a unionist or a loyalist, but the fact that you've come from this country and it's been through so much, and to where we are today, I understand that there's still an underbelly and there's still drugs ripping through the country. You're
Oh yeah.
always going to get that, as you say, but the fact that we're actually at this level and we didn't just crumble like many others would, we actually fought through it, and to actually be the country that we are today is fantastic.
It is because I mean it was that kind of close knit community, close knit in Ireland. It's only now that we're kind of getting back up to the levels where we were during the famine. And
Yeah,
it goes back to, as I said, in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s, Ireland was still this small, you know, country town type of Ireland. You know, as I said, Dublin was still that small city. Cork, our cities were tiny. Our cities in other countries were known as towns, you know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's on it's only kind of into the new millennium that Ireland has kind of taken off. Well, it started really in the mid 90s with the Celtic Tiger and the building and houses and all that. But the arse fell out of that, and we all know what came after that. Like the criminals and the short and ties fucking ruined us
Yeah.
with their dodgy dealings. But I think Ireland is still, though, you talk to somebody and, oh, Jesus, you're in Clare. And I know so and so from Ballymun. You might be talking to someone, I know fucking someone. And I always tell people that Ireland's a village. And it's a village. And everybody knows somebody that knows somebody. And I think we still have that as a society in Ireland. And and I think that's why we never really got out of control. And even though we're an island state, I think it's always been under control in a sense. And again, that people have seen what has gone on in the past, and then it didn't, you know, like the war for the drugs never really came to the streets of Ireland as such, in a sense that it was an all-out battles on the streets like you might see in Mexico or places like that. But yes, we've seen, and we're still seeing, loads of shootings and, you know, incidents around Ireland, on the streets of Ireland, with people being shot and all that. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but I'm not. It's not a lawless country like it had happened in other countries where the drugs took
Oh,
over.
for sure. I get where you're
You
coming
know,
from with that. It wasn't like as you say, Mexico, a massive,
or
massive
Honduras or
country
somewhere like that. You
where
know.
you've got multiple hits per day. Where as you listen,
Yeah.
as you say, you've seen quite recently the footage coming out of Mexico where I think it was it Pablo's son or Pablo, one of Pablo's relations, where he just comes out and he just points the gun at the cop's head and he puts the phone, or was it the cop's head? He puts the phone to the cop. There's a big shootout and he gives the cop the phone. The cop listens to the phone. He threatens everybody's family, and the cops just fuck off. And this is on live
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
Ireland isn't like that.
No.
It's not a
No.
totally lawless society.
No. And
You know,
as a country, we wouldn't allow it.
yeah, of
I think
course, of
that's the
course.
difference. We wouldn't allow it. And yes, there is the criminal underworld there, and especially at the time of the Veronica Gearden murder at that time. I
Yeah,
know people who were involved in that, and there was absolute. I don't know if you remember it, but there was absolute outcry for that. I mean,
well,
that's when Cab came.
for the people that don't understand that situation, do you want to, because there'll be a lot of viewers from all around the world, do you want to sort of uh, brief people on that story?
Yeah, well, what happened was Veronica was she was a reporter with the Irish Independent at the time, and she was investigating a gang of criminals in Ireland, and they had warned her off a couple of times, and she fair play to her. She says, "No, I'm not having that," and they ended up murdering her on the Nice Road in her car when she was coming out after paying a parking ticket up in Nice, which is a town just outside of Dublin. The backlash that came from that was that the government couldn't sit back on their hands and do nothing about it anymore. They came out and they brought in this thing called CAB, which is the Criminal Assets Bureau, which a lot of countries around the world are looking at or kind of copying now, which means that, Robert, you've got 4 houses, you don't work, where did the money come from? Yeah, well, we're fucking taking the lot off you and tough, and then you're getting arrested for, the proceeds of crime, it's called. And that came into effect because of the murder of Veronica Gearden. And now it's been very effective in an arm for the Irish government and the Irish crime, that the criminals know that without asking or without going to courts or whatever it is, I don't know the actual, the legalities behind the whole thing. But if you can't prove where you got all your wealth from, it can be taken off you through the proceeds of crime, through the Criminal Assets Bureau, or known as CAB. And that's CAB. And as I say, I think the European Union were looking at it as well. And I think, again, some companies or countries are looking to say, this really works. And it does, it really works, And we've seen it, you've probably seen it yourself over the last
I
few
don't
years.
the thing about it is, I don't want to even say that I agree with it or I disagree with it, because at the end of the day, it's a great thing that, it's going to mean less crime. But, it's, I'm always an advocate for less government control. But that said, if, the control that the government do have, if people are going to kill reporters, journalists that are going to do honest reporting, I'm also against that. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
I know, she was a great lady. She'd done a lot of good work, and she did not deserve that, and that was a very disgusting act to do, and that ripped through the community. That's a story that was told to me whenever I was growing up by my
Oh,
dad.
that hit every home, and
Really did
the
not.
outcry from that, the government could not but act from that, and that was one of the occasions where the criminal world went, fuck, we'll hold our hands up here and we're fucking gone over here, that was, and that's still, as I said, that's a big one for the Irish government against the proceeds of crime again, as I say, going after cartels and so on and so forth, and they're going to use it for a long time to come as well.
Yeah, 100%. The thing of one of your famous a very famous person is your countryman, Conor McGregor, and he has a lot to say. Conor McGregor has a lot to say. He's from Crumlin, isn't he? I do believe.
He's a neighbour of mine, yeah, an old neighbour of mine, yeah.
I know, an old neighbour of yours, right?
Yeah, he'd only live 5 minutes down the road from where I came from, yeah.
Is that a persona? Because I knew that every time I speak to somebody from Crumlin, they're like, oh yeah, sure, I just live down the road from everybody knows him. Like it's
Yeah, well, he would have, because Crumlin's not huge, you know what I mean? I think there's about 8,000 housing units in Crumlin, like, so you're always around the corner from somebody,
Is that a persona? Because there's a lot of things that he gets up. He comes back to Dublin. He chins people in bars. He gets involved. He himself got sort of in trouble with some was it cartel mob members in Dublin that time. You know, it was reported on that that's what happened.
Yeah.
Like, what's he like? Just in a personal question, what is that just a persona, or is he really like
Do you
that?
know what? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And as you get, like, I mean, he's about 18 years younger than me. I think he's about 32, is he? 32, 33. I'm 50.
I 34 or something now,
Yeah,
33,
and
34.
like like 30, 16 years of age and the difference is it's a lifetime, you know. And I've never met him, so I don't know. Is the
I
honest
have to
answer.
say this. I met a few boys from down there, right? And I thought to myself, because I knew what the Clondalkin ones are like, because I've been down in Clondalkin a few times,
Yeah.
and I've been around the place, and people have always said to me, "Oh, is everybody like that in Ireland? Is that just sort of a WWE act?"
Mm.
And I actually have to say, see if you had fellas from Dublin, see the personality that you have, like, Crumlin area, all
Yeah.
those different places. You have this type of personality that if everybody had that fighting skill of Conor McGregor, you're dealing with multiple people that could become world superstars. They just don't
Mm.
understand their worth. And that's the thing in Dublin. You've got these people that there's drugs involved, there's very low confidence, they're struggling to get on. The government's completely destroying them with taxation and the price of things and inflation. I don't care what anybody says, the euro absolutely ruined Ireland,
Mhm.
ruined the place. The punt was amazing. The punt was, everybody used to go down there for cheap. I don't know, maybe you disagree with that, but personally, myself, I feel like the euro ruined Ireland. It wasn't the same after the euro came in. But if these people have got a history behind them, and they've got a personality behind them. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
about, there a lot of people should go there for movie stars, acting, fighters, things like that, because they have that
Oh yeah. Well, I
personality.
mean, look, over the years, no matter what Irish people are involved in, we've punched above that way.
Yeah,
Where
100, yeah, 100%.
you know, where to be fighting, you know, excuse the pun, or where to be, you know, business or finance or, you know, writing or music or whatever it may be. Like this little island of ours, we've produced some of the most famous people in all fields of everything over
Crazy.
time. And it's something to be proud of because we're a great
Yeah,
little nation, even though I have written a book about, you know, the underbelly and some of the dark things of Ireland over the last kind of 40 years. You know, there's still 99% of the people in this country who are the best in the world, you know, and
100%.
we are the best in the world. But as I said, this book of mine, it covers a lot of crime and a lot of bad things. And
I can't wait to read this book, The Black Pill. Go out and buy it, guys. It will brief you on the whole situations following. What's the correct time period from start to finish, so people understand what they're reading.
well, he's born in 1969, so you kind
Mhm.
of take out the first 10, 11 years of that, and it kind of
Mhm.
kicks in around 1980.
Yeah,
And then it kind of goes up to kind of 2018, 2019.
that's quite a big time period.
Yeah,
That's
because
incredible.
I got the go ahead for the book in 2018. It was, yeah,
Yeah,
and then it was late 2018, and the publisher, I wouldn't mind, it was a London based publisher that done it for me, Austin McCauley's, because I couldn't get an Irish publisher to do it for me, you know. And he came back, and they came back to me and says, "Look, we're interested in this," but it was about four companies came back to me. I whittled it down. Two of them I was never going to go near anyway. One
Mhm.
of them was switching out with the other one. So the one I picked, and it was late 2018, and then into 2019, there was to and fro with editing the book and design of the book. I know, like, I say the design of the book, but I just wanted
It's
it
a
to be,
beautiful look. It's simplistic, but it's a beautiful
you
looking
know,
thing, and I think
and
that's what it is. It's a very simple design, but
yeah,
it's beautiful looking.
exactly. Yeah, nice. And that's what I wanted, because I said it to a lot of people. I says, "That's it. That's the black pill." And they're kind of going, "Yeah, don't fucking overcomplicate the thing, you know." And they said it to me, just wanted, like, they wanted to do, say, coming out of there, like a gun coming down through here, and different things coming off. And I said, "No,
No,
just let it
no,
explain itself. It does. It's
yeah,
fine." And it came up to around, so it was around Christmas of 2019 that we kind of had says, "Yeah, let's sit down and let's iron out all the details of the contracts." And the book got the go ahead, would you believe, in March of 2020. And what the fuck happened in March 2020? COVID kicks in, right?
Right.
So it was a 2-year kind of blank of, and people, why is it taking so long? I says, well, for one, COVID, I says, printers aren't open, offices aren't open, nobody's really. So it was released this year on the 31st of March officially. And it went on sale on March 31st. So it's out, 5 months now. And it's getting really good feedback so far, as I said, with all the different reviews and so on. Look, I was looking on Amazon, and some books only have 5 and 6 reviews, and are there 10 years. My book's got 24 reviews on Amazon already,
Well, that's as I say, I'll leave the link for that book in the description of this podcast, and go over and buy the book, guys. I mean, I'm going to be buying this book. It's, I'm yet to find a book. I know there's a few books out there that try to do this, but sort of cover that era of Dublin. There is a few books, but as I say, you've lived it, you've been there, the sort of the talk on the street, the guys, the people in the shops, the corner shops, what the crack is, you understand what the sort of
like I've spoke to people,
yeah.
I've spoke to people who've been involved in all different aspects of it. Like there was a couple of detectives from years ago, and then there was a couple of gangsters as well from years ago, and a couple of people who grew up in Dublin, say in the late 60s into the 70s, and they were telling me what it was like. Like there was a line in the very early stages of it when Thomas Moran was born, and his father goes back to the tenement, and he was saying that he knew every mouse by name. And that was something that I got from somebody who lived in Crumlin, who lived in the tenements, and they were telling me, "Actually, Jesus, we knew every mouse by name." And I went, "Oh, yeah, that's quite good." And that sort of stuff, those little anecdotes and little things that you hear, you add them into the book. And so when it came out, seemingly everything's online these days. It's very hard to get into bookstores if your name's not J.K. Rowling or Stephen King and all. And rightly so, they should be, because they're world famous writers. But my book is in Ireland, so you can get it in Eason. Eason's. You can
that's
get
pretty
it.
Big, man. That's
it's online in Eason's. Yeah, online in Eason's. It's online in Amazon. Waterstones. You can get it in Blackwell's in England as well. It's also Barnes and Noble in America. It's on Kobo. It's on Kindle. So Book Depository as well has it. So all them big sites have the book. It's there, And
is there any audio version?
No, there's no audio version for whatever reason. I don't know.
Because a lot of people, the day that they're on the books and they do the audio, and I understand when this is your first book, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's your first book, so it's probably But as I say, listen, I've got no doubt in my mind that it will be a very, very, very successful book, because, as I say, it's just, there's a wealth of knowledge in it that people have to read. I can't wait to read it. I didn't. Obviously, you're speaking to you behind the scenes and stuff. You hear about a book. I'm hearing about a million books, but you've got me really interested in this book, and I just urge people to go out and buy the book. That was a really good baseline of yourself, the book, sort of Dublin. It would be fantastic to get you back on to sort of talk about individual little things, but I think it would be good just to leave it at that for people to
To if you want to have a read of it and then pick me brain from what you've read in the book, no problem at all.
Fantastic. That would be amazing. I'll actually read the book and I'll get you back on, and we can do that.
Perfect.
Robert, is there anything else you would like to say?
Buy the book.
Buy the book. Buy the book.
Thanks very much for having me, and hit that subscribe button.
No, listen, my pleasure, Robert. Thank you for taking the time to come on here. It was fantastic listening to you. Your knowledge is brilliant. Guys, as I say, the link for Robert's book can be found in the description of this podcast. Go buy it. Leave a review after you read it, and I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Peace.